It's Itchin Radio.
Okay. Right, so welcome to another one of our Teaching and Learning podcasts. So my name is Sadie Garner. I'm Head of Teaching and Learning here at Itchin College.
James Bedwell, Teaching and Learning Coach at Itchin College.
And I'm Hannah. I'm a teacher of law and vocational studies at Itchin College.
So this podcast is based around some level one kind of discussion. So Hannah's been teaching level one for 5 years, and you're just going to talk us through some of your essentials, some of the best bets, and some of the things you've learned to just really help us understand.
Yeah. So I came to teaching level one vocational when I didn't really know much about it. I did it as maternity cover for somebody else. But I quite quickly learned what it was about, and I was supported really heavily by the teaching assistant in the class. And one of the main things I would say is that I have, since teaching level one vocational, I've got an excellent relationship with the support for learning department, and that is essential, because often the teaching assistants might work with some of those students in more lessons than you work with them, and they've also got all that background and that school background and things like that. But one of the things I sort of picked up quite early was that you have to take what you could call a trauma-informed approach to it, but this is now fed into all of my teaching. So one of the main things would be that I don't ever raise my voice as much as I can help it. Obviously, sometimes it's natural. I've got quite a loud voice anyway, and generally I don't need to raise my voice much higher. But also having a really safe and secure classroom and working on that from the beginning. So this is something I've built on every year, and this year I probably put the most effort into teaching the students about what I was doing and why I was doing it at the beginning. So I always say to the students, and I say to this to them ahead of time if I meet them at enrolment, that I have an open door policy, meaning if you need to leave, you can leave. Mm-hmm. But you just need to let me or Support for Learning or someone know where you are and that you are safe. Because what we know about a lot of these students is that when they were in school, they might not have had the best experiences with some quite strict rules and having to sit still, stay in one place, stay in the classroom at all times, and having sanctions for even just needing to leave the classroom. So that's kind of essential number one. And I also always now have a seating plan. I let them sit where they like in the first lesson, and then I record where they've sat, and if I feel it's appropriate in that lesson, I'll say, this is your seating plan now. If you've got any problems with this, then just come and speak to me or let me know in email. And the reason that that's important is even because at the minute I've got a class of 15 in a room that sits 28, but they still need to know which seat they're going to sit in. Mm-hmm. It's not even about behaviour management for me or classroom management.
More routine.
It's just routine.
Yeah.
It's your seat is going to be there and you know where it is. And then you can use it for classroom management. So one change I've made recently was a student was always turned around, so he's sat at the back now.
Yeah.
Because then he can't physically turn around.
Yeah.
And again, that could be something that is sort of a trauma-informed concept, that he might feel the need to see the whole room at all times. I don't know whether he's experienced trauma that we know of as a college, but it's just those things that if that's important for that young person, then just sort of making it happen. The other essential is that the variation of need in the classroom is going to be really significant. So there's kind of two categories that some students might fall in, is having an identified learning need. And some of those students at level one might actually be at an entry level of English or maths, especially if they've come from our essential skills provision where they work at entry level, or they might have been school avoiders or school refusers, however you like to call it. There's now the concept of emotionally based school avoidance to describe some of these students, and that's something that educational psychologists are looking into and looking at how it works. And actually at the Festival of Education in Wellington, I went to a talk about that, and it was really, really interesting. And then some of the students might have all of those things going on, SEMH as well as an identified learning need, or none of it. But yeah, one of the things that's been most prevalent this year is students who haven't gone to school, or haven't been to school since year 7, or have been on a reduced timetable, or were only in one-to-one sessions, and so on. And this is actually a really big programme for them to come.
I guess creating the, like you said, safe learning environment is key in that case.
Yeah.
If they haven't been in education consistently, and having that sort of treating them as adults in terms of
Yeah.
that open door policy probably makes a big difference.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, you actually might need to put really heavy support in, like meeting them at the gate, literally picking them up from their parents' car. And that might be the only way that they will come into the building, because walking on their own is just too impossible. And I think that's somewhere where college is really different to school, because they might be greeted by a teacher, or they probably would be. Someone would be on gate duty or morning duty, and then they would all go with a group. But they come in at whatever time they like, and then they've got to find their own way to the classroom, and that's just such a big thing for some students. So yeah, lots of meeting at reception, meeting at the gate, walking them back down.
And can I just ask, does that come up in conversation when you meet them on enrolment? At what point do you and they identify that would be a really helpful support need?
So it might be something that's identified at enrolment, or often when there has been a period of not coming in and the reason is cited as anxiety or mental health.
Okay.
It's then, right, what can we do to get you back in? Number one is, shall I meet you at the gate?
Oh, okay.
And we've got students who came to us in level 1 that are now studying at level 3, and they still get met at the gate. And it's just part of the routine.
Yeah.
And I know that Support for Learning have got a whole kind of procedure for it now, because there's so many students that benefit from that. And it's a really useful strategy.
Thank you. You still got some essentials?
I think that's all of my
That's okay.
essentials. Yeah, that's all of my essentials.
Best bets then.
Best
Best
bet.
There we go.
So I started to develop this in my second year of teaching level 1, and this was also informed by the fact I knew we had Ofsted coming.
Right.
And to help my own brain and to help the students, I heavily structured my lessons. But this is now something I go back to if I am struggling with classroom management and behaviour management. And I will put a timer on every single activity and have it come up on the board. There's a really easy way you can add that to your slides. Always clear instructions and paper worksheets. That's another one of the things that I could have included in the essentials. Is the students are often terrified of using a Chromebook. I'm not really too sure why. Whether that wasn't something that was available to them in their alternative provision where they were studying, or whatever it might be. We've got students who are significantly afraid and will bolt out of the room if asked to use a Chromebook.
Right.
So trying to do everything on paper and then having that as a clear target to be achieved at some point in the year. So something I've suggested is, with one particular student, is that we just at least, kind of like exposure therapy, just get the Chromebook out and switch it on. You don't have to use it, but just do that. That's how basic we have to go with these steps. But yeah, it's incredible. I think it's because students use iPhones and iPads, and they are not like a Chromebook. It's not the same thing. And probably the keyboard.
I was going to say the keyboard might be part of it.
Maybe it's the noise,
Yeah.
And the fact that some of those skills might be underdeveloped from school or missing school in some cases, whereas the reading and writing side of things have been developed from an early stage, feel more comfortable in that sort of aspect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if some schools have only iPads, so the students might only ever be used to using an iPad to research or type on the iPad, which is similar to a phone.
Yes.
And then they're getting further away from using a computer.
Yes.
Because then you've got Chromebooks is one thing. It's a step further if you get them onto a desktop PC.
Yeah.
That is really confusing, because again, it doesn't work in the same way.
Yes.
So yeah, that's IT skills is really important. But having those paper worksheets available and work to be done on paper, I give students exercise books if they want them, and that is another sort of element of safety, because they might be terrified of the idea of sitting in front of a computer and not knowing what to do and not wanting to ask.
Just on that note, Hannah, do you feel like some of those best bets for level 1 students are also useful or have an impact when you're teaching the level 2, level 3s? Because I'm looking at the idea of clear instructions and timers, and that's something that I would include for lots of my level 3 learners as well. But do you see it have a sort of impact as they progress through from level 1 to 2 to 3, and because you teach across all? all levels, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I use with my level 2s a lot more. I think it's kind of fed up to
Yeah.
the levels, and especially following some of the training we've had through our CPD on, chunking. That suggests that you would always have a timer on the board, that you would only have a couple of instructions on the board, so it kind of feeds up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely do use it more with all of my classes now. And the same thing, the fear of the computers is in level 2 as well.
Right.
Level 3, not so much. Maybe I should record it. No, the numbers that of students who say they're not having to use a computer.
They don't want to engage with it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting. Really interesting. And I think that safety in that routine and habit is actually really quite crucial for all learners, but then they're more vulnerable. It's absolutely critical.
Yeah, and I would say everything that I've said in my essentials is how I inform all of my practice. But it's just knowing that chances are you're going to have more of those students in that class, and if they are affected by something or triggered by something, then it's possible the reaction could be bigger.
Yeah.
Especially if they've not been at school. They really don't have a trust of adults. They don't know how to navigate it.
Do you remember we had our external CPD on that de-escalation training? Did you feel like a lot of that resonated with your practice already or informed anything else?
So I was sat next to Claire, who was the TA that literally got me through that first year, and we were nudging each other saying, you do that, you do that. So it was really validating because I've come to this on my own, and just through observing staff like Claire and through personal experience, other employment and volunteering experience I've had, where I've just kind of pieced it together. But yeah, it was really good to hear the neuroscience behind it as well, for that, and the learning of the behaviours. So one thing she said was about greeting the student every single day on the door, always saying hello, good morning, and their name, and that eventually they will expect that and may even respond. So I had a student the other day and I said, good morning, name, and he went, it's not a good morning though, is it? But I thought, okay, I'm going to greet you every day then and say good morning and just show you that I am just greeting you. I don't mean anything by it. It's just, this is something we're learning,
I think, when you say that thing about never, ever raising your voice is really interesting, because what I picked up from that session was, and obviously, as educators, we always try to keep really calm, but that she was just absolutely clear that shouting, all the shouting does is damage the relationship. That's all it will do. And regardless of how tricky the situation is, they have to be able to model you. So you have to stay as calm and as rational as possible, even in the most challenging of situations, because they have to be able to model you. And I just thought that's really powerful to know that all it will do is damage. Yeah, it's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think perhaps I'm not a shouty person anyway, and the fact my voice is already quite loud and clear, that I generally feel that I've got their attention most of the time, and if I haven't, I'll stop talking. So I'll go that way. I'll be silent. Or we've talked about how you can whisper to get them in as well. Was
there any other best bits?
Yes. So one big one, and again, this came out of me developing my practice through the focus that we've had on Q&A for quite a few years in our CPD. And that seems like the impossible task with some of these students. But something I've done for 4 years now is always let them have mini whiteboards, and write the answer on the mini whiteboard, whether they're going to say it out loud or not. So get them to write the answer on the mini whiteboard. And then if you've got a TA in the room, which I normally do with level 1, use them as a roving mic. And so you say to the students very clearly, write the answer on your whiteboard, and then I'm going to pick 3 people to tell me the answer. Amy is here. Amy's going to be my roving mic. Is that okay, Amy? Amy goes, yes. And then that means that when I go right next, I'm going to go to John over in the corner. Amy goes over, and they can have a quick interaction. Do you want me to read? Or do you want to read? So either the TA is stood next to the student and the student feels able to speak, or the student shakes their head, points at the board, and the TA reads it.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, and I've done it sort of off the cuff, but then I've checked in with the student after, checked if that's okay. One time a student said, I just don't want you to call on me at all. So I said, that's fine, we'll do that for now. And then it's just a type. But yeah, the roving mic is a really good one, but you need mini whiteboards for that, which is fine, as long as we've got them and the TA. Or I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
I'll go, right,
Get your
I'm
steps
going to
in.
come over.
Yeah.
You might do that with level 3s even. If someone's just got a small, quiet voice, then I'm going to need to project it for the rest of the class anyway, so I might do it.
Oh, that's fab. That's great. That's a great strategy. Also, we've just had, because obviously we all have professional chats and conversations just in corridors or making tea and things. I really liked yours because I don't know if it's one of yours you've noted, Hannah, but you said that you always question your level 1s in a row.
Yeah.
So you'll always question along the row.
Yeah.
So they all know who's next. It's
Yeah.
really clear. And I really liked it. So I tried it with my level 3s and I really, really liked it because, you know, that cold calling is so critical to establish as a teacher that learning's taking place and that they're with you and there's no gaps and you can fill the gaps. But evidently some feel uncomfortable being completely called off randomly. So I really like that row because they do know and then they are that little bit more prepared.
Bit of predictability, part of their routine, I
Yeah.
guess.
Exactly. It's a scaffold. It's a halfway to cold calling, isn't it,
Yes.
really? Because everyone is going to have to speak, but I'm going to do it in an order.
Yeah.
A slight step up from that, and I tend to do this with level 2s more, is that I go to the next person, but I say pick a number between 1 and 5.
Yeah.
And then I count from
Random
them.
name generator.
But it's still kind of random.
Yeah.
But then I'll just start counting in the other direction and pick the people I want anyway to make sure I've covered everybody. But that gets everyone really on their toes because they try and get each other.
Yeah.
Kind
to
of
be
out.
picked.
Yeah. What's really interesting though, it's just really helpful because I don't know if you've ever noticed this. Often as a teacher, with that whole thing about who you question in your eye line, and there are students that because of where they're sat, you won't question quite as much. That row questioning just prevents that because you have to call upon that person next because they're next in the row.
Yeah.
It's really helpful not question some students as much as others because of where they sit.
And that is one of the reasons I did it, because I was worrying about my bias and that I was taking the easy route, picking the student I knew was going to have an answer. And it helps me remember where I am. But you can go different directions, but you can sort of... It's good.
And imagine the students can help you remember and go, oh, it was me last.
Yeah.
We're going that way next.
Yeah. But that's definitely a big routine, as well as just asking whoever as well.
Fab. Any other best bits, or have you got...
That's kind of my best bets.
Yeah, best bets, sorry.
The only other thing is that I have a poster of learning modes in my classroom with a
I've
little
seen
arrow
these. Yeah.
that I can stick on it, and it's a visual reminder of how we should be acting at that time. And it's recognising that there might be different expectations at different times in the lesson. And again, I have done this with all my level 1s this year. I haven't done it with my level 2s, but I might, because it's something I bring in later, and I teach it, I question on it, I cold call on it, recap it, and then I use it. So I say, right, we're going into respectful whole class mode. What's the number 1 rule of respectful whole class mode? One person is talking at a time. And you can do it like that, and you sort of do it as you go. It's something I stole off a teacher on TikTok, to be honest, which is a great source of information.
Yeah, good idea, steal it.
That's what teachers do. We nab and we magpie off of everybody else. That's a great strategy.
Yeah.
So what ones are there? You've got respectful whole class.
Respectful whole class, which is when I'm presenting from the front, one person is speaking at a time, so it also covers cold calling. And we would talk about how difficult it can be to speak in front of a class and the reasons why we should be quiet when other people are talking. Then there's polite table groups, which is where you might be doing group work sort of in a table. Quiet partners, which would be just talk to the person next to you quietly about the work. And individual silent study. I never really use individual silent study.
Say, it was interesting.
I just haven't, because I've not needed it, and it almost that reminder, oh, we should be in quiet tables, or quiet partners, or polite tables, is enough to get them on task anyway. It's just some sort of reminder. But yeah, I haven't done an independent silent study with them yet.
Haven't needed to.
No.
Lovely. Any final points, Hannah?
Not really. Just the one final thing that I could talk about it all day, obviously. But one final thing is that not being afraid with those students to talk about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is often that they are all really anxious, they've not been to school before, this is absolutely terrifying. Or the elephant in the room is, I don't want to be doing this course. I want to be doing level 2 sport. I want to be doing psychology. And I'll say that really openly. I shied away from it for a couple of years, but actually it can increase a sense of belonging, and they've got kind of a commonality amongst them. And just addressing that. You're all here because you either haven't had a great time at school, things didn't go great, you didn't pass your exams. And I do it with my level 2s as well. So that's my final thing.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks so much.
Nice, thanks, Hannah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, thanks for listening, folks.